member and director of Tiny House Community Bristol, and Susan Cataldi is not Susan Cataldi. You can probably rename yourself if you want, Rachel, in your screen.
I quite like being Suze for a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll
try. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm not Susan Cataldi. I am definitely Rachel Butler, and I'm the founder and one of the directors of Tiny House Community Bristol, which was set up in 2017, and we're a community benefit society.
Great. So we're really chuffed to have this hour or so to as part of the Bristol Housing Festival, which has just been amazing. I don't know if you've been to any of the other events on the programme, but there's all kinds of exciting things going on. And we're here to talk about tiny house regenerative settlements. And it's really going to be an exploration of what do we mean by that? What is a tiny house? What is a regenerative settlement? And how are we as Tiny House Community Bristol trying to deliver that vision? So Rachel's just put up our slides. So the first portion is going to be us talking to a number of different slides, and then we'll kind of have more of a discussion phase afterwards. And this was set to run till from 4 till 5. But we're now just past 4:20, so thank you all for being patient. And we are happy we will run for the full hour. And so hopefully you're all able to stay. Maybe you could let us know in the chat if you've got to dash at 5. So Rachel, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Just to say, yeah, there'll be time for questions. Just write them down or jot them down in the chat as they come up for you, and we'll have a kind of Q&A bit and discussion more towards the end.
Okay, can you hear me all right? You hear me okay, Maddy?
Yeah.
Okay, so off we go. So this webinar is titled Tiny House Regenerative Settlements, Homes, Community and Hope for a World in Crisis. And it's part of Bristol Housing Festival, which is on at the moment, and very kindly co-hosted by Bristol Community Land Trust and Community Led Homes West, which is our lovely local enabling hub. Ignore that one. Right, okay, so some pretty scary big picture context initially. We're all fully aware that things environmentally are not going in a great direction. Climate change, we've got issues with fresh water, access to it. We've got a growing pollution problem, and our precious forests and biodiversity are being destroyed on a quite rapidly and on an enormous scale. This chart is the Integrated Earth System Science Framework by the Resilience Centre, and it shows 9 of our planetary boundaries that they've mapped. And if one of these are overshot, that means collapse basically for society. We've currently overshot 6 of these. So it gives you an idea of the scale of the problem, that it's not just about the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis, it's also ocean acidification, biogeochemical flows, freshwater use and land system change. So we are going down the road in a very wrong way, and we need to pull it all back and change direction as quickly as possible. Earth Overshoot Day is the day that's calculated each year when Earth's systems can replenish their resources. And as you can see, in 1970, the Earth was able to regenerate its resources, okay. But as the years have gone by, and with the exception of lockdown last year, when things got better very briefly, the Earth is not able to restore its resources quickly enough for the rate that we're using them. So we've got to stop cannibalizing life, basically. And we're using 1.7 Earth's worth of resources, and obviously we've only got one Earth. Here's a breakdown of how, if everyone lived like they did in the United States, we would need 5 planets to sustain us all. These figures from 2019, by the way, so they're probably a bit worse now. We are not quite so bad. We're about half as bad as the States, using 2.7 planets worth of resources. And in 1987, 34 years ago, the Brundtland Report, Our Common Future, defined sustainable development as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that was 34 years ago, and we haven't collectively done anything about it. We've talked about it a lot and denied it a lot, but haven't done anything about it meaningfully. Some of the social crises we have going on as well, with food banks, homelessness, the housing crisis and loneliness. So sorry to remind you of all these things, but it's really important to set the context. So mainstream housing policy and delivery via the market is a big part of the problem. The true number of people in need of social housing in England has now hit 3.8 million. This equates to 1.6 million households. 3.4 million people are experiencing some form of housing need. In Bristol, the house prices have risen 36% since 2015 to an average of £285,000, 11 times the average salary, 6.4 times higher than 1995. The number of single Bristol residents who are homeless has more than tripled during the pandemic. In Sea Mills, the average house price is £350,000. There's a social housing waiting list of 13,000 in Bristol, although I think in an event yesterday, I think somebody said that's gone up to 16,000 now. And Sea Mills North is ranked 59.9% in terms of barriers to housing and services in the 2019 Deprivation Index. So yes, a bit more context. Then added to that, we as a society have too much trauma, too much competition, lack of conflict transformation skills, and loss of community. Can the way we build homes respond to this? Enter community-led homes and tiny house community Bristol. And let's just say a little bit about what we mean by what is a regenerative settlement. The first paragraph there is taken from James Shorten's description of what a regenerative settlement is. He's the planning consultant who has designed this framework. And he says that a regenerative settlement is the idea that human settlement does not have to deplete the environment it occupies. It can actually make things better for the natural world and its inhabitants by being designed and lived in differently. A form of human settlement which also takes care of the environment. So that's entirely possible. And that's an alternative human construct that we can do if we choose to. And what are we planning to regenerate with our housing, tiny house communities, is the soil, because that's disappearing as well, water, regenerate biodiversity, human health, community health, our economy, turning away from GDP growth and towards meeting the needs of all within the means of our planet, which is the wonderful Kate Raworth, who designed the 8 principles of Doughnut Economics. And the idea is to move from quantitative growth to qualitative growth, like trees, like the natural world has been doing for millions and millions of years, very successfully. We're going to regenerate, and we are regenerating the way we collectively make decisions, and we are regenerating our democracy. Here's a really interesting example of a community in Portland, Oregon, and they took this really rundown housing development with just a bunch of grass and tarmac around it. As you can see here, this is the end, the sort of 90-degree angle. And they hired in a local social enterprise whose sole purpose is to dig up tarmac and concrete to get to the soil. What an amazing organisation. And look what they've created. It's called Kailash Eco Village in southeast Portland. Just look at that regeneration. And there is a video, if you have a look on YouTube, and you can follow what they did and how they did it, how productive they're being, how they're feeding their local community, how resilient they are to all of these crises, and how happy they are, and enormous levels of well-being. So within the tiny house context, let's just have a look at a few examples of so to help us imagine what a tiny house regenerative settlement might look like. Maddy, what was the name of this one? Was it Navi Eco Village in Mexico?
Yeah, it's not not a tiny house settlement, or an affordable one in the way that we mean, but it's kind of deep regenerative design in terms of the way that the systems of the home are integrated with the systems of the landscape.
Yeah,
through the water and the energy way that it's in a very dry, water poor environment, which is kind of fairly desolate for miles around, and they're focusing on the soil and the participation of the owners and residents in the restoration of the ecosystem. If they don't sustain the living world around them, they won't sustain themselves. That's the way that they have been designed symbiotically with the landscape.
Gorgeous, love it. And then this is another this is a tiny house village somewhere, I can't remember where. I think it might be South America. Quite uniform tiny homes. And here's some that are more unique. And I think this might be in Missouri, this one. But just to give you an idea of tiny house villages that are already in existence. And obviously, we're going to, with our site and sea mills, which we'll talk about shortly, we're going to need to blend ours in with the housing that's already there. So this is a photograph of part of our sea mills site. And so you can see how it is at the moment, and that there's lots of concrete and tarmac. And there's our lovely Julie looking around and seeing what's what there at the moment. And then, so this is a diagram about what we will be aiming to do there, and a little bit about how we can regenerate that site with wastewater reuse, growing space, shared electric bikes and scooters, soil building, community meeting and event space, new spaces for biodiversity and habitat so we can relearn how to thrive and balance with nature, shared workspace and studios, shared kitchen, renewable energy generation and storage, zero waste shop and laundry, among other things, with a combination of retrofitting buildings that are already there, doing some new build as well, and some self build and self finish, using modern methods of construction and using, as far as we possibly can, using local and regional sourcing of expertise, skills, materials, and labour. And this is available to Tiny House Community Bristol members, including people from the local area. Maddy, would you like to speak to the next few slides, I wonder?
Yeah, for sure. It's just worth saying for those of you who don't know much about us already, who are coming to this for the first time, is that Sea Mills site belongs to Bristol City Council, and they have a very pioneering land disposal policy. They decided that they would look at the land that they own and they would offer some of it to community-led housing groups. And so they've done one kind of phase of land disposal, and we were one of 5 groups that bid on a site and secured preferred developer status. So it's thanks to the council that we can really start to prototype some of these ideas and bring them to life. And also, as you can see from the image there, those thin grey lines, those are the driveways up to these sites. So they're funny little leftover sites. They're not the easiest to develop, not the type of site that you would normally give to those who are perhaps least experienced in housing development. And yet what the challenges around access and so on have enabled is us to innovate even more. So what access issues with this site have meant that we will be creating a zero car development. So it's in seeing constraints as opportunities. Always, there's always, seeing what is this site and its funny foibles. What is it trying to call forth? So we're really seeing it in that way. Thanks, Rach. So this is our boardroom. That's our general circle. So we use a system of dynamic governance called sociocracy, which we didn't invent. It's been around for a long time and used at all scales across the world. It's an incredible system for organizational governance and processes and structures that enables all voices to be heard, the sharing of power, and it makes for a very rich organizational experience with a diversity of voices making the decisions we make all the richer. And it really is this thing which has probably more than anything else given us the strong foundation that we have as an organization, as a community benefit society. So this is our vision as an organization. Our vision is a world where people can dwell and thrive in diverse, inclusive and nourishing communities, integrated into and participating in the wider living systems of the planet. It's a pretty good vision that most people share. And within that vision, our mission is to create regenerative places where people and nature coexist and evolve together to provide solutions to the housing, ecological and climate crises. I think that's something that more and more people are wanting to find ways of acting, coming together and being that give us agency in finding the solutions that we need to find. Next slide. So the tiny house movement. Do you want to speak to this, Rach?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So
Liz, would you mind muting?
Sorry, oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, so according to Wikipedia, and we've all got our own definitions of what the tiny house movement is, but I think these sort of capture some of them. And the tiny house movement embraces simple living, shared community experiences, small homes that are generally under 46 square metres, financial prudence, a shift in consumerism-driven mindsets, and eco-friendly choices. So what's in our regenerative settlement toolkit? Maddy's already spoken a little bit about sociocracy, and this is our current sociocratic structure. Another name for sociocracy is dynamic governance, and it is very dynamic. There's a bit of biomimicry going on, because sometimes it's a bit like cell division, and sometimes it's about cell repair. And all these, we've got the general circle in the middle there, where we have monthly meetings and updates, and we weave all the information work together from all the actual working circles. And then the red circles are the actual where the work happens. And we use the analogy of a maypole for our main aims of the whole organisation. And I guess you could say that could sit in the middle of the general circle. And then the ribbons of the maypole are sort of taken up by the working circles, if you like, and then all working together symbiotically, and weaving together their work and information, create a beautiful pattern on the maypole. And also each of the red circles there has their own mini maypole as well. And so as we go along, we ensure that each circle, its work should be helping us move towards the aims of that particular circle. And decision making is devolved to the outermost circles. So it's decentralized, there's no hierarchy, and there is an awful lot of leadership available for anybody to step into, which is a beautiful thing. Is there anything you'd like to add to that slide, Maddy?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And then we are learning more about something called pro-social, which is helping people to evolve a more pro-social world through cooperation and psychological flexibility. Because we're currently living in a very, I think, adversarial, competitive society is a fair description of the society we live in now. In order for us to have a resilient, regenerative future, we need to relearn how to cooperate and collaborate and be more loving with each other. And pro-social, the pro-social framework helps very much with that. And so was at the beginning of our journey about learning how to integrate that. Apparently it's very complementary to sociocracy. So we're very much looking forward to adding that to our toolkit.
Yeah, just to add on that last one about the complementarity with sociocracy is that the way that decisions are made within sociocracy is through consent, and we find we make decisions within our realm of tolerance, not within a very sort of specific like idea of what's right for me. But what's within my realm of tolerance? What am I okay with? What am I happy to consent to that is good enough for now and safe enough to try? And that's a really good example of collectively becoming more psychologically flexible. Like it's not me versus you, and we've got to battle it out till we find a kind of compromise that doesn't meet, that feels like not quite win-win. It's so these other models and tools to help us find the sweet spot with our in our realms range of tolerance.
Amazing. And then we have the framework of One Planet Living by Bioregional, which is the vision of a world in which people enjoy happy, healthy lives within their fair share of Earth's resources, leaving space for wildlife and wilderness. And with this tool, you can begin to see how it could complement the other tools that we're using. And within each of these categories on the left there, like health and happiness and equity and local economy, all the way down to zero waste and zero carbon at the bottom, there's a whole range of actions that we've developed, that we developed a few years ago in a workshop about how we can actually put that into practice in a community. So we're really looking forward to digging deeper into that and how we put that into practice, and bringing us back into using one planet's worth of resources. So, as we spoke about before, we're using far more than one planet's worth. And then one of my favorites is Doughnut Economics. When we move in and we're starting to live together, and before that actually, we won't be asking, how much profit can we make from this, and what's our financial bottom line, and who's our competition, and blah blah blah. It will be, how do we meet the needs of everyone within the means of the planet? That's the overarching aim of Doughnut Economics. And the outer circle there, you can see where we were talking about earlier, where we've overshot the boundaries of the ecological ceiling. We need to push those back into that green ring donut in the middle. And then inside is the social shortfall, where we need to lift people up and out of the middle of the donut. So really looking forward to getting stuck into that as well. No more GDP growth, thank you very much. And then we are partnering very strongly with our local land trust, which is Bristol Community Land Trust, who are very kindly hosting us today. And Patsy, our lovely chair, is here with us today. And we spent a lovely day with them yesterday, talking about the community-led housing sector and our developing strategy. So, and that's a really important part of the jigsaw and the tapestry that we are weaving together. It's all about partnerships and ecosystems where we live. The co-housing network will play a part for us as well, and they have lots of research that's helped inform our work. And they have, with their research, they have learnt that between 10 and 40 households work best with social community dynamics. Co-housing model helps us to be part of the wider community. It's all about co-design, collective resident control and stewardship. It's really inclusive and has private and common facilities. And the 7 cooperative principles of being a cooperative are incredibly important when you're talking about community empowerment, and when you're recommoning land and you're learning how to do this work together without control from the state, or, you know, from power over. It's all about power with. And when we're looking at the affordability recipe, what's really helped us and enables affordability, first and foremost, is land. We need that to be gifted back to the people. We need to take our land back. And that forms the foundations of genuine affordability, access to land. We, as Maddy mentioned earlier, we use a social value calculator with our bid to the council. We have a very high social value, so we joke sometimes that the council needs to pay us for taking the land. Joking aside, we do have high social value. We have 2 funders on board at the moment, £80,100 from Power to Change and £90,000 from Resonance. And we've just this afternoon, before this webinar, had a fantastic conversation with the Tudor Trust, with the idea that we may partner with them about our inclusion and diversity work moving forwards. Self-build can really help with affordability, as can self-finish. And when you're actually resident, the more resources you share, the less your cost of living becomes. We aim for 0 energy bills. That's always the aim. Whether we can actually reach it is another story, but it's a fantastic aim. Our energy bills will certainly be a lot less. We plan to grow enterprises locally, so that's the icing on the cake financially, and growing food is always going to help. Yeah, I wonder, Maddy, would you be happy to say a little bit about carbon positive homes?
I could. It's not really my area of expertise, but then we're all volunteers and learning as we go, which I think is a really important part of this story. Is that I've been, volunteering for 2.5 years with Tiny House, able to because I have another job, and everyone is putting their time in for free to create this incredible experience. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's also extremely rewarding and quite a thrilling kind of ride. So for us as the kind of initiators, we have a whole community of people who are kind of professional experts in various different areas, and one of the areas that's critical to us is how do we sequester carbon, basically, through Tiny House Community Bristol, because it's not just about stopping what we're putting in the atmosphere, it's that there's too much in the atmosphere already. So how do we contribute to the drawdown? And that is done generally through the materials that we can use and the way that they're grown. So we're really interested in, when we put our architect's brief together and our design team, we're really going to be wanting to explore with them what are the materials that we can use which are carbon sequestering, which help in that piece of work. And if possible, can we source those from our bioregion, or where, from within our country, certainly. And really interested in hemp, certainly, as is a big one that really needs to be invested in far, far more. Yeah, bioregional living, and that's to do with operating at a scale which enables us to have a relationship with our place, and for there to be a reciprocal relationship and a regenerative relationship between the kind of the humans and the other than human world, where one does not degrade the other. And our bioregions, so areas that relate to watersheds and our kind of topography and geography and the cultural history of an area, is something that we've come a long way from, and finding our way back into relationship with place, and valuing the riches of that place and regenerating the riches of that place is part of what we call bioregional living. Go for it.
So we sort of realised quite early on that we need to think in a systems way, because everything is connected. There's too much linear thinking, particularly in politics, and short-term thinking as well. We need to be thinking systematically, because everything is connected. Everything's related to everything else. If you do one thing in one system, then the other bits and bobs that are related to it are also going to ripple out. So yeah, we're kind of holding this complex system of a project, but and the Tudor Trust said today, you know, they're not afraid of complexity, which was really lovely to hear. So it's quite a shift in thinking, but it's much more in line with the natural world, that's for sure. And here's a wonderful book by Daniel Christian Wall, who talks all about this sort of stuff, designing regenerative cultures, and he's one of the people that I follow, along with the wonderful Joe Brewer. It's time for ordinary people to come together and build their own tiny house communities. And here's just a few photographs of some of the work we've been doing up here in the beautiful Stapleton site. I'll just flick through these and just let you have a little look, learning to build stuff together. I love the face peeking through the top. Yay! There we have it.
Mm-hmm. Great. So it's just a whistle-stop tour, really. And we are about 100% affordability. We are about addressing the fact that the people who are most in need of homes are also most in need of power. And that was something that came through really strongly yesterday in our community-led homes day. And so a lot of the work that we want to do is about addressing power and proactively bringing the marginalized into community and a sense of agency around creating their own realities and their own communities, free from overburdens of debt and so on. So we've just come up to 5 o'clock. So I'm hoping that nobody has to rush off. We're sorry for our late start. So should we just have a few, see if anyone's got any immediate questions, and then we were going to have a short kind of breakout room for you to kind of reflect and discuss with each other, and then to just come back and share. But we'll just sort of see, as we're a smaller group than we were anticipating, we'll just see what questions come up, and just go from there. I think we'll feel our way a bit, because aware of time as well. So yeah, does anybody have any questions or any contributions? Prana.
Hi there. Thank you for that. That was really informative and yeah, really thought-provoking. I noticed, I'm just asking, it looked like you had about 14 subgroups, subcircles, and I'm wondering, are they all working at the same time? Are they sort of switching on and off depending on the need? I noticed you had a couple site groups and a couple sort of psychology groups and things like that. Are they part-time, full-time? Can I figure that out with you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great question. And, you know, you've kind of intuitively answered it already, and to some degree. And yes, absolutely. It goes back to this dynamic governance thing that we have to make sort of see how many people we've got and what capacity and resources we have. And sometimes we can be stretched a bit thinly. And the tension that is now revealing itself is that we need to relook at our structure, and we're going to do that with some coaching help from Sociocracy for All. But indeed, the energy is moved around depending on what the project is, where the project's at, what work we need to do right now. If there's a conflict, community psychology gets activated, and you know, we're talking about a restorative circle to be created. Dreamocracy went into hibernation for a bit, but has been reignited because we need to help new members learn about sociocracy. Yeah, so the energy and the human resource shifts and flows around the organisation, and all of those circles, we're probably going to end up having 4 department circles and then more sub-circles off those to help it work more efficiently. But we need to have that consultation with Sociocracy for All soon to help us work out what that restructuring looks like. Yeah, so I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you so much. And oh gosh, I'll have to come back. I had a second question, but it's just flown out of my head.
Thanks, Prana. Pete, to you.
Hello. Firstly, can I say what a wonderful, positive and powerful presentation. Thank you for that. I have a couple of questions, one of which relates to, you touched upon modern methods of construction. And I guess the question would be, what lessons have been learned from Ronan Point? And the second question relates to the site. Obviously, parts of Sea Mills are obviously a floodplain. And I was wondering, given the sustainable brief and desires of the project, what mitigation has been taking place surrounding the increased risks? We see Spike Island, for example, flooded each year. We see the entrance to the floating harbour already exceeded on the 2 high tides of the year. What, taking that into consideration, lessons for the future have been put into the site?
Yeah, so did you want to take some of that, Maddy?
Sure. Yeah, our site specifically isn't on part of the floodplain, but we're interested also in those awkward sites that are, and because there are really interesting, you know, tiny house modular builds which you can do on stilts. Even you can have floating bases, and all of that I think is very much within our realm. It's not about the big, easy, flat, accessible sites, although those are really nice too. But we need to think more broadly, and with MMC and with tinies, and all of those things are possible and need to be explored, need to be prototyped on floodplain and elsewhere. So very open to discussing those things with landowners. Yeah. Ronan Point, I don't know that case, I'm afraid. Do you know, Rachel?
No, I don't. I'd be intrigued to learn more about that, Pete. Is there a link you can put in the chat?
Yeah, if you literally just use a web browser of your choice. Ronan Point is the reason why Bristol is so flat in terms of its architecture. It was a social housing block built in central London in the late 60s, early 70s. It wasn't even occupied. One of the very first people to move in went to make a cup of tea. The gas didn't light. A pocket of gas built up, exploded when she pressed the button, and blew the panel off its mounting, causing a block of dominoes and the entire structure of the west side of the building to collapse onto the streets of the capital. It was an absolute miracle. Nobody was killed. Fortunately, the building wasn't occupied, but the explosion, which destroyed a block of flats that hadn't even been occupied, let alone, completed, demonstrated the risks associated with modern methods of construction and caused the abandonment of high-rise buildings for pretty much 20, 30 years in the social housing sector. And there are countless references. There's a gorgeous black and white photograph of the exposed building on the web if you ever want to look at it. Wow. It's the reason why we don't have high rise until recently in Bristol, because government withdrew the funding for properties over 5 stories after the explosion. Nobody was killed, but it was a miracle nobody was killed.
Yes. I suppose something to add to that is that obviously this event is part of the Bristol Housing Festival, and they have been in a really great position with Innovate UK funding to explore what is happening around modern methods of construction now, and also, modern methods of construction extends more into ideas like the wiki house, and what can we do ourselves that is transparent, that is human scale, and where obviously integrated into that now would be all the considerations about carbon and performance and passive house type standards, or whatever it might be, and with tinies, nothing about the design gets to be hidden. and the Housing Festival is helping to prototype and support a lot of those ideas, as we've seen with Snug and BedZ or the Z pods and various bits and pieces, and some of those are only just beginning to come to life. So it's really nice to be able to partner with them, and I've brought up that question with them about how does the community-led housing sector really benefit from the Housing Festival and MMC journey.
Great. Callum has got some questions here. The first one is, was the creation of your tiny house group a response to Bristol's policy on community purchase of land? And what do you recommend for areas without such progressive planning policy? And secondly, did you need to produce a business plan to win the bid for C Mills? And what did that look like? I can speak to the business plan bit, and the simple answer is yes. And it was very long and very comprehensive. But going back to one of the reasons why we've been able to do this is that Bristol Community Land Trust have, as part of it, community-led homes West of England hub, and they have a whole ream of wonderful enablers who are experts in their field, and their skill sets are very specific. They each have their own set of gifts, and so we can go with our funding, we can select which enablers we need to or want to work with to help us. And we did that with our business plan, we did that with our financial model. It was incredibly, it just did what it said on the tin, so enabling, worked really well with us, really got to understand who we are, where we're coming from, what we wanted to do, and really helped us to write that plan. And yeah, and about the creation of our group, it wasn't a response to Bristol's policy on community purchase of land, although that was kind of one of the things that I was thinking about initially. The creation of the group was a direct response to emotions that I felt when I saw young homeless people on the streets, and how upset and angry it made me feel, and how determined to do something about it I was at the time. And you know, the passion and determination is totally held within the group now. I'm not the only one driving it anymore. It's a really amazing group effort, and it's a response to, in addition to homelessness, it's a response to all the things we were talking about earlier about climate change, biodiversity loss, the broken housing market, all of the above. So, and then, you know, looking at Bristol's policies was followed on from that. So the group was created from deep deep feelings and passion and sense of what's right. Yeah.
And just that piece on what we'd recommend for areas without such progressive policy. Yeah, it was said yesterday at the community-led housing day that you know, this is the kind of UK front runner land disposal policy for community-led housing, and so it's really, well, we are you know, as beneficiaries of that policy, we are helping to navigate the teething problems. There's a real commitment in the city to address the housing issues quite holistically, and this is just one part of that kind of attitude. And so I suppose I would just point other authorities to the policy and to the officers, and it's there as in the public domain, it's there as inspiration, and the people that created it and are delivering it are just there to be talked to. And if there is a community-led housing hub in another part of the country where you are, to really use them to connect with our hub here and use that network, because the hub and the council work together. I just wanted to go just up a bit to a question from Luciane earlier, and then we'll come to you, Jordan. So Luciane said, is this for the people who are creating the project? If not, how do people get to be able to be involved and live there? Great question. And so obviously, as I responded in the chat earlier, we've got, I don't know, about 80 or so signed up members to our Community Benefit Society. And C Mills, as our first site, be about a dozen houses. And obviously the need is far greater. So it's really a case of managing expectations about, we've just got a small number to begin with, and so what's important to us is to always be sort of horizon scanning for where's our next site going to be, and what challenges is that going to raise. And so the more people get involved in signing up and becoming a member, and there's a link in the chat right now, so please do. There's a form, a very simple form, and you pay your quid and then you're a member. Periodically we run welcome events to introduce people similarly to how we have done today to what we do, and to sociocracy and our structure and this and that. And there we then invite people to circles, and then people can get involved. And I think the critical thing at this stage is that if you getting involved now doesn't mean I get a house soon. It means that I'm building the capacity of the organisation. I'm helping to, find a new site and help us to kind of grow as an organisation, so that then as we build, we'll be able to take on another development and another one and another one. But at this stage, it's not just we've got a bunch of houses ready to go. And also with the council site, we need to, for our rental properties, people need to go through the home choice system, so that the council can show that the homes are going to people who are registered as being in housing need. We also have a local lettings policy that then the short list of people through home choice would have to go through. So there's a process as well, because obviously how do you, when you've got 16,000 people on a housing register and we've got 12 tiny homes, the allocations process is a difficult process. Who gets to get one, one of these first little bunch of homes. We've just got to start where we've got to start. So please click on that link and join up if you're interested. And coming along to a welcome event doesn't mean you then have to go in and get involved.
And I'd just add to that I guess the overarching idea is that a lot of this work is about empowering. Well, we've empowered ourselves now to start this community benefit society and to house ourselves, hopefully. And so we're learning how to do it for ourselves. And the idea is to scale this up across the west of England, bioregion, to then help other people begin to realise that if we can do it, you can do it. Oh, bye, Sonia. It's nice to have you with us. And so we've empowered ourselves, and as new people come in, they're learning to step into their power and start working towards having a tiny home in one of these communities for themselves. But we've just had the new cohort that we're integrating now, and very early on we said to them that you folks coming and joining now will represent the impetus to then start looking for our next site. That may be as part of the second round of the land disposals with the council. We might decide to put a bid in for that, which I think is in February, or we might decide to go and start talking with landowners out in the countryside, farmers who are asset rich, cash poor, lonely, depressed, are about to have their subsidies changed over to being paid for regenerating their land. So if we have those aims already as a society, we could potentially take our work to the farmers in exchange for leasing a field or two. So there's all sorts of opportunities, and it's about cell division and spreading the power out and helping other people to develop our sociocracy and develop other sites and move into the homes that they help to build.
I just say as well that it is really a leap of the imagination in terms of, you know, statutory planning, local plans and so on. Just that very thing of like no building in the green belt. Is that relevant still? Or is it relevant when you start to consider things like regenerative settlements? What about living landscapes where we are regenerating our soils and reimagining our food system adjacent to where we live in our zero carbon nature first clusters of homes? You know, it's so things like just protecting the green belt, to my mind, are too simplistic now, and there is another way, but it because often our green belts are, you know, characterized by monocultures and quite dead in many ways landscapes, completely devoid of people. So it's some of these things that it's you know, the Tiny House Community Bristol is a vehicle for addressing some of those big imaginative things as well. I'll go to Jordan, and then I'm also conscious that it's like 5:20. So is everyone all right to hang around maybe till past? Does that feel okay? And we'll loiter as long as people want to loiter as well. Thanks, Ree.
I'll be quick, and I think you actually answered quite a lot of it in the previous answer. But yeah, as well as Pete, I think what you're doing is incredible. It's great to see it happening here in the UK. Kind of, we've all probably seen it from afar, Australia, America, and so on. But it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing here in the UK. So we're a modular buildings company. We've been utilising modern methods of construction since 2007. So it's just for me, it's understanding kind of like how we can help a bit more, how we can share knowledge, how we can just get involved a bit more for, you know, and this isn't saying you should use us to build tiny homes or anything like that. So this is how can we help? Because I want to see this kind of go out across the UK, as I'm sure we all do. And yeah, just understanding really kind of how we can help share perhaps some of our knowledge to help support what you're doing, really.
Lovely, yeah.
Yes.
I think that would be wonderful to invite a conversation there, Jordan, and set up a call between us, and we can do a bit of dreaming together. We like to do that because that's always the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah, so drop us an email and let's set something up.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe this will kickstart our deeper exploration into MMC that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, no, we'd happily kind of play a part in that, and we have a kind of a fairly strong design team as well, kind of supporting us across our projects. So yeah, more than happy to do that. That'd be great.
Brilliant. Do you want to share your email or anything, Rach, or how do you want to do it in this?
Yeah, should I type my email in the chat? And
Why
I just want, yeah, I'll do that. And then just to say, shall we answer Mark Friend's last question, and also Prana's remembered her second question?
Yeah. Mark, are you here? It looks like he's not here anymore. His question was, when do you envisage someone living full-time year-round in a tiny house developed through your community? So at the moment with C Mills, we're hoping to put in our planning application in the summer 2022. We've literally heard yesterday that we've got our funding for our what they call plan stage. So that's everything we need to get us through to funding, to planning. So all being well, we then have no idea how long it's going to take to then develop it. Hopefully not too long. So anything between a year and a half and 5 years, I don't know. Hopefully not 5 years, because there's a pressing need. But yeah, we're learning as we're going, so it'll get quicker. The more we do it, the better we get at it, I think. And do you want to add anything to that, Rach?
Yeah, I think it's just a prime example of us walking the path as we build it at the moment. And also, I was having a conversation with the lead of the Housing Festival yesterday, Jez Sweetland, and his work is deeply involved in MMC, and we were talking about, you know, our options for when we actually do the build. We've got lots of options and more options growing by the day, it seems, which is absolutely brilliant. And I think over the years, we're going to need to prototype as many of them as we can. I think we need to develop an ecosystem of ideas and prototypes and learn from each of them. MMC, for example, might present a faster way of building our regenerative settlements. And if that can be done in a maximum empowerment for the residents way as possible, like for example, with Agile Homes, you can go and actually help to build your panels yourself, and then you can do self-finish, you know, so it's about speed but also empowerment of ordinary people at the same time. So where's the balance with that? You know, if we're sort of enabling 100% self-build scheme, that's probably going to take a lot longer, whereas MMC will be a lot quicker. So where, you know, where do we strike the balance?
Yeah. Or do we just get a CNC cutter and just make our own from scratch? Yeah. They're doing amazing stuff in Knoll West with We Can Make, building, you know, if they built a factory to build their own houses, and really exciting in that sort of hyper-local way for local need by local people. It's really transformative. Prana, do you have another question?
Yes. Well, Maddy, you answered earlier about Z-Pods. You know about them already, it looks like, and they go up quite quickly. There's not really an element of self-build, I don't think, to them, but yeah, Devon is using them to solve the housing crisis up in Torridge. But as you're talking, what came to mind is I thought, oh, right, what a really great way to rewrite the narrative of failing farms and not turning them into holiday parks, and rather, you know, offering a regenerative solution to the way farms have to evolve in our coming future. And your process I've been following, as Rachel knows, for years now. I was one of the first members on the Facebook group, I think. And Rachel knows I tried to talk to my own. I was a board member of a housing association for 7 years. And a few years ago, I tried to get them interested in Rachel making a presentation. And I just think, gosh, the timelines for working with public money, in particular, you know, it's you're facing the wall, aren't you? You're facing a real, not a virtual barrier, a real barrier in these funding streams, and trying to make something innovative happen on other people's timelines. And I'm working with a group right now in Exeter, a tiny house community, have mostly been happening on Zoom, and during the pandemic. And quite a few of the members just can't see the benefits of waiting for public money. not that anybody has their own private funding. we're all skint, and how it's going to happen, I've got no idea with just crowdfunding. But yeah, thereby goes a very difficult path as well, because obviously whether you use public money or private money, you still have to go through the planning machine, don't you? So so do you feel going this public way and getting stakeholders and partnerships and the hub, and obviously it's all been very beneficial, but in some ways, do you think it's going to be more successful than, say, sort of, I don't know, there's no modern way to talk about private funding, except maybe, thinking back to the commune, idea of, or the sort of collective co-housing, everybody pools their money together and hopefully it all works out kind of model. Versus, I'm sorry, I'm really rambling now, but
No,
I think you understand what I'm saying about when you harness the public money streams. It seems to be perhaps maybe not only a better deal for the residents and the participants, but perhaps for longevity as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of
I know, it's about 16 questions.
Yeah, no, it's really great. I love it. And I think part of the answer is that there are so many different ways to do this. And, we've explored quite a few of those along the way as we were putting our Maypole values together. And it seems like we're at one end of the extreme of one spectrum by doing it this way and doing it completely by the book, even though we are forcing the council really to innovate on a massive scale, but they're coming with us, they're really behind us. But the other end of the spectrum, it always comes back to land, always, and that is the biggest enabling factor. That if you can get you don't need to own the land, but if you can get secure and affordable, genuinely affordable access to land that's secure and has longevity, then you've got something to literally work with, and you can use the value of that land as long as your lease is long enough to leverage all sorts of stuff. And then yes, ordinary people can come together and we've seen prototypes where young people with very little money have reclaimed an awful lot of materials out of skips around the city and have built their own homes very, very cheaply. But then it comes down to how much level of risk. The really sort of rebellious nature in me that sometimes is screaming to get out loves to think about squatting land banked land and getting a group of passionate people together and
here.
Let's just do this. Let's put a call out across the UK. Come to this bit of land which is being land banked by one of the big property developers, and they're just creaming the uplift of value off the top. Let's go and squat it and let's build something beautiful and regenerative on it. But I mean, in my idealistic mind, that's possible. And it wouldn't cost an awful lot of money, I don't think. And then you've got all these other options along the spectrum too. You can do part private, part public, and different amounts of different combinations. And
I think it's the attitude of sorry to interrupt, but I think it's the attitude of members of new groups
Yes.
towards public engagement, in order to be funded, in order to do the dream. You know, there's a natural aversion to coming to being under the microscope and being scrutinized, and you know, all that stuff. Yeah.
Big trust issues, because you know our politicians have lost our trust, and understandably we're all locked into this
I think
work.
Yeah, I think as well it was really important for us to start this project in a very above board way, you know, to actually look the system square in the face.
Yeah.
And so, okay, right, how are we going to do this? How are we going to solve these problems within the system? Because then it gives the system a chance to go, right, how do we need to change? And you know, and the council is really starting to, definitely has a will to try and wrap its head around that. And so we decided, you know, which battles are we gonna pick? So we kind of decided that we're going to go below minimum space standards, so like true tinies, and with communal spaces to make up the difference, which the council has a revised space standards policy that allows that again, which is amazing. But also there's a question of building regs. So actually, how much more affordable would a house be if it didn't have to meet every building regulation? And yet if we're on council land and we're doing it by the book and we're getting planning permission, we need to meet building regs. So it's like we want to do it completely transparently and visibly in a way that is replicable within the system. And so the systems as they are and all the resources that they can wield can then get behind these models, and they don't remain marginalized.
You are the thin edge of the wedge, you know, you are making it happen for not just yourselves, but for everyone else later.
That's the hope.
So
also just to add as well, that I was really interested in another event with the Housing Festival, which was talking about this UN Habitat Climate Challenge. Bristol is one of 4 cities in the world to be participating in that, no others in the UK. And the challenge that Bristol has chosen to enter into is one around affordable housing. And so and climate, and with a particular question of what are the financial models that are required to deliver climate, you know, solution, affordable housing. It's a really good inquiry, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that kind of pans out. And I'm up for Tiny House putting its hat in the ring with that challenge. And because then thank you, Pete. Oh, great. That would be great, because then what we can learn in that process from all of that will draw all kinds of thinkers and expertise together into this a sort of developmental phase, quite an intensive, maybe a year of developmental phase, working and testing out these ideas of financial modelling and so on. So if we could do that and you know, find financial models that work to deliver tiny house regenerative communities at speed, that would be amazing. And then it would be replicable, and not only apply to tiny houses, but to others as well. So there are these interesting challenges that the council is kind of going, yeah, we want that challenge, yeah, bring it on. And it can look to us because we're all in the community and together community-led housing with the council. So, you know, we need to find those solutions together.
What's the name of that global challenge again?
It's UN Habitat Climate Challenge.
Okay.
I think, and it's in partnership with Nesta, and some other Swedish housing. So I'm not sure exactly, but
oh well, good luck with that. That's an amazing opportunity.
There'll be a recording of that event if you're interested in watching it. It was recorded, so it will be on the website or wherever it will be.
Okay. Thank you all.
And interestingly, just to say that Hayley, who said must go and thank you in the chat there, she's from North Somerset Council, and we met her yesterday, and in fact we were sitting next to her, and we are hopefully quite soon going to be presenting to her team at North Somerset Council about what we're doing with Bristol. So this is starting to step into the broader vision now about how we start moving into neighbourhood councils and helping to inspire them as well. So because we've all got the same challenges, haven't we? You know, we're all around the globe.
And parish councils with rural exception sites.
Yeah,
that's an interesting one for us as well.
Folks, I need to go to the loo.
So I think we'll draw it to a
ask
close.
a quick question, just on the financing side of things. I'm just really curious, who pays for the tiny houses? Is it the council, or is that where you're talking about the funding? Are the mortgages involved? And
yeah, so the next part of the financial model is like this funding I spoke about earlier is called, it's in the category of revenue funding, which is before you build. And then you have something called capital funding, which is the money you need to actually do the build. We're being invited to put an application to the council for their affordable housing fund. And as part of our financial model, we have that, fingers crossed, we should be able to acquire just under £900,000. Yeah, there's a chance that might not happen, so Resonance might be able to step into that gap. Interestingly, check out Resonance's fund, which is called Community Developers Fund, and they have brought all the funders together as a one-stop shop for funding, so you don't need to go scrabbling around for a fund here and a fund there. You go, and they're piloting with us in Bristol on this CMIL scheme, and then rolling it out. So, and then I believe that there will be a long-term loan with the likes of Ecology Building Society, which will be paid back over about 40 years. And then that's where Tiny House Community Bristol will be paying back that loan with the rental income from the tiny homes, but obviously not the shared equity ones, self-built.
it seems to me, well, it might be sort of getting the wrong end of the stick or something, but it's just something that popped up when you guys were talking before, that like people who've got pensions, private pensions, still need to make sort of money on their pensions. That there's a funding scheme called ESG, which is, you probably heard about it, sort of environmental, social and governance. And from what you're talking about, it sounds like it's right up that street, but I don't understand how you go about getting involved with that sort of funding. But I just thought I'd add in the vocabulary to you guys, just in case if it's any help, because my pension, I need to get it out of fossil fuels, and I've been meaning to do it for years, and it's so stressful making decisions like that I want something that I can trust and something that's doing good in a local community. That other people in situations like me. I'm just wondering if you've what's the word? God, my vocabulary. I've been on Zoom all afternoon. If you've approached organisations like Tridos, the bank, and if they might be able to, you must have done, because
we have done, and
okay.
they have they have like a minimum to work with. I think the minimum is 3 million.
Really? Oh God. Okay, right. Isn't that a shame?
Yeah, but there are others, you know, and there are a lot of very clever people working on the whole pensions area. It's a really interesting area of funding that we haven't yet tapped into. But
I want my money invested in this country, to be honest, where it's doing good in my local community. And if I've got that problem now, everybody else is sort of going to, at some point, do something about it as well. Just another question: what size are the properties? Because I know there's a minimum size requirement to get a mortgage on them. I think it's like 30 square meters or something. So if it's below that,
you go to.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like all of the other bits of innovation, we're kind of like going over or round or under or through to find solutions.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. The tiny house movement. I first saw it on YouTube. There was a New Zealand program, and it allows people to get out of shared accommodation and have a home. And I just think it's so much nicer than being crammed. I've rubbed shoulders with property investors, and it's really awful. They design out communal areas, and you'll just have a kitchenette for a house of like 6 people or something like that. And it's like, well, you need connections for well-being. So private landlords is just not the way forward. I feel really sorry for people that are stuck in that sort of accommodation for decades. So fair play to you. I think it's amazing.
Thank you, Leander.
It's amazing what you're doing. And I just wondered, I mentioned earlier that I'm an assessor for this online course, and I'm just wondering if I might ask a few questions, and the guy that's running the course, just to see if they've got any ideas to point you in which direction for funding. I don't mind sort of asking questions if there's anything of use there that I can feed it back to somebody. I don't know if I've got anybody's email address, but
put my email address in there.
Well, the course, if you scroll back up, I'm doing a course. It's through Get Smarter, but it's with Cambridge University. I've done a few sustainable courses through them. They're really interesting. And the course is like, what's it called? It says there, my brain's gone. Sustainable Real Estate is the course. Okay. And it's aimed at, there'll be all sorts of people on it. But the guy that is head of the course, who I was on a Zoom session with earlier this afternoon, is Manish Datta, who used to be worked for the Green Building Council and has worked for M&S, Sustainability Plan A or B, I can't remember which one it is. So he seems like a really interesting guy. So I've got his WhatsApp number, so I can ask him directly, and I'm quite happy to ask him a cheeky question and see what happens. If you don't ask, you don't get. So
love it.
So yeah, but I don't know if I've got any of you guys' email address if I need to come back to you. So
I'll type in the chat again. It's starting to get dark in my room. I can't see the keyboard.
I've got Rihanna Martinson.
I put yours in, Rach.
Okay.
I've done it.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks,
so I do have an email address to come back to. So I'll let you know. So
I'm going to have to thank you, Leander. I'm going to have to nip off. I've been drinking too much coffee. It's really great to talk with you all and to be able to share our work. And thank you so much for bearing with us with the tech, and great conversations, everyone. And Rhiannon and Suze, thank you for hosting us. And
it's our pleasure as always. It's always amazing to hear your journey, and hear all of the inspiration that you deliver to all of these people that have joined us from up and down the country today. So thank you so much both for putting that on, and also for everybody for bearing with us for my technical errors earlier. Thank you.
And also just want to say hello to Anna, who's here, who's another one of our directors.
Yay!
Yeah, thank you everyone so much, and join up, go on the website, have a look around, and become a member, and yeah, thank you all so much for spending this time with us.
Keep dreaming, everyone. Keep dreaming and doing.
Yeah.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye bye.